Hi, everybody. My name is Nigel Williams. I'm chair of the Alliance for Parking Data Standards, which is sort of commonly known as APDS. Like Marjolaine, I'm not a techie. I'm not a standards expert. I suppose I'm really a parking nerd. I've worked in the industry, the parking community, for over 30 years. It's something I know quite well. APDS is an international initiative of the sort of global parking community. Over 600 organizations have been involved in the development of its data model and technical specifications, and those are currently being implemented in many locations in Europe and North America. Right, so hopefully you can see the next slide. I think it's fair to say that the parking ecosystem is rather more sophisticated and digitally mature than most people realize. The European parking community, we recently had the opportunity to make a presentation to DG Move about our sector and providing an overview of our activities and the increasingly complex interrelationships with other sectors. Now, I promise not to go into too much detail here today, but this sort of slide shows you the relatively simple sort of interaction between a driver and a car park, which used to be the case. You know, you drove up to a car park and you took a ticket or not, put your money in when you drove out. Whereas now there are a whole number of actors actually involved, both for planning your trip, finding out you know, what the tariffs are, and increasingly for actually paying for the parking event itself. And also, I mean, what this slide shows is there's a lot of interaction with a number of other activities, which you know, be it public transport, be it EV charging, micromobility, etc. So the whole impetus from APDS from the very beginning was to develop a common language, so the different actors in the parking community could all talk to each other and exchange information. I don't know. I think Gilles Carabin was on earlier, but I noted, because he was one of the people at DG Move after our presentation, he sort of said something along the lines of, I hadn't realized that the parking ecosystem was so, I'm not sure whether sophisticated was the word to use or complex, but I think it's an important point that you know, parking has been doing a number of the things that are being talked about for a number of years. I mean, all the digitalization of parking started about 15 years ago. Obviously, parking is only one element in a much larger, ecosystem of urban mobility. And this sort of rather simplistic diagram, I guess, sort of illustrates why we need a set of integrated standards that cover the management of traffic, both on its way to parking places and the parking operations themselves, you know, payment, reservation, etc. I mean, every car journey starts and ends with a parking event. So while there's, you know, the whole ITS model is about communication of various things that are happening en route, and also planning for that route. You know, the parking is very much part of that that ecosystem. So to achieve the integration between management of traffic and parking places, over the past year, DATEX and APDS have done a lot of work together, come a lot closer, and the APDS data model was adopted as the basis for the DATEX data model for parking. And we work with the community to ensure that the revised specifications continue to provide the technical means to meet the obligations that are laid out under the delegated regulations. So the technical work to prepare a revised version of the DATEX II parking model, so that's basically a revision of Part 6 of the SEN 16157. That technical work is now virtually complete, and hopefully it will be published in the near future. So that DATEX APDS collaboration has cleared the way for alignment between road operators and parking operators. And from APDS's point of view, integrating our technical specifications into DATEX 2 will greatly facilitate and accelerate their adoption. And I would suggest from DATEX's point of view, it essentially guarantees that the parking community will use those standards, as by definition they were developed to meet their needs. And it's all very well having standards for various things, but if people don't adopt them, don't use them, it's a bit of a fruitless task. Anyway, as Pedro said in his presentation on the UVAR box project, that project scope covers not only low emission zones, limited traffic and pedestrian only zones, it also covers parking regulations. So as he mentioned, their recommendations and their work, a lot of it is based on DATEX. The DATEX APDS alignment will facilitate the implementation of the UVAR box implementations, recommendations, sorry. And in practice, it's worth noting that already the management of such zones, ULEV, ultra low emission zones, etc., is often carried out by the same operators and using the same systems as the people that are providing the management of the parking areas. So there's a lot of sense in that. My last slide is one that I think is key to all this. So as the diagram highlights, ITS is at the center of a whole range of different communities: EV, connected autonomous vehicles, last mile logistics, traffic information broadcasting, parking, public transport, etc. And several of the presenters in today's webinar have underlined the need for collaboration between the different communities and harmonization of the standards that those different communities have developed. And what the diagram sort of shows, you've got behind the sort of colored bits of the sort of communities, and sitting in front, what we tried to represent are the standards that those communities have developed for their own needs. So, each of those communities have developed standards to meet the needs of their members, but increasingly it's clear that they also need to be able to communicate certain data elements, at least, to others who are outside their own community. I mean, EV charging is a good example of that. For an EV motorist to have a seamless experience when parking and charging their car, they need to be able to access data about the location and availability of a parking space equipped with the right type of charging point. And then ideally, they want to be able to make a single payment for both parking and charging. That sounds relatively simple, but it actually requires a significant amount of communication between parking operators, charge point operators, and payment service providers. So what we believe is that DATEX is ideally placed to extend the approach they've taken with the parking community to other such communities, and in some ways, I guess, perhaps become the glue that makes such seamless experiences a practical reality. We are, in APDS, we are very aware that there are a number of challenges with regard to ongoing digitalization and extending the scopes of adjoining functional and technical domains, as you can see here. And increasingly, I would suggest the standards work that's required has to be done in close cooperation with the adjoining domains. That's not always easy, because it means that there needs to be a degree of flexibility and compromise between different parties to actually achieve something that is workable. And we strongly believe that this type of work has to be based on real-world use cases, with a strong focus on the interfaces and collaborations to achieve alignment between the communities. And this is particularly true relative to emerging technical standards for curbside management. Pedro mentioned the meter. Same for EV charging, last mile logistics, micro mobility. And what we believe is, in some ways, it's too important to be left just to the standards experts. It needs to have an injection of real world use cases and practicalities to make sure that the way this integration works is something that is acceptable to all of the communities involved.